Are you stealing artwork? A lot of times when people think about artwork being stolen, the idea is very concrete. It's clear. You're imagining some valuable piece of work being taken. There's also other ideas that may come to mind. The British were known for taking artworks and from different places that they had colonized. On larger scales, you have world wars. The Nazis were well known for taking valuables such as artwork from different areas that they had invaded. Sometimes what people think of when artwork's being stolen is that one art burglar or group of burglars that takes a painting to sell for their own gain. In these instances, it's clear that artwork's been stolen. It goes against 18 U.S. Code 668. I want to point out a couple of things in this code. One, that for it to be considered a major art theft, that the piece of art has to be over 100 years old and in excess of $5,000, or the piece of art can be worth at least $100,000. Another part of this code worth noting is whether or not it is an object of cultural heritage or if it belonged to a museum. So this would mean that artwork that was considered priceless in a museum would clearly fall underneath this code. What about the case where you snap a photo of somebody else's artwork? Or if your artwork really refers to some art done by somebody else? What about the case with Linza, where it's an AI that's gathering lots of images to create a new image? It can be difficult sometimes to know what constitutes as stealing or inspiration or being derivative. But there's more than just opinion at stake here, since there are legal consequences for stealing. In my video, I'm going to break this down into two parts. In the first part, I'm going to be focused a lot on the legalities of stealing, what's considered stealing, and what some of the outcomes have been in situations where someone thought that they had been stolen from. In the second part, I'm going to be focused more on defining things in terms of opinion and ethics. What is inspiration, what is being derivative, and what is being a thief? Part 1. What do the laws say? When I work art festivals, sometimes people are really excited about the work that I do and they just snap pictures of it on their phone without thinking about it. I usually don't get really upset by this because I know that that's what's going on. They want to upload on social media that they're at a festival or something that I've done. They're just tickled and they want to share it with a friend. Sometimes it's that somebody likes my work so much that they want to send it to their partner and get their partner's permission as to whether or not they can buy it. And that's all totally fine. However, when I get to upload my artwork online, I get to control the quality of the image that's there. When I don't have control over that and someone uploads a quality image of my work, then theoretically they could be making prints of my stuff or putting it onto objects that they could then sell with my image on it. This sounds unrealistic, but it happens quite a lot. You would be surprised at the companies who have done this because they're not small. I have two examples here now. One is from Disney and one is from Kohl's. And this is from an article titled 50 Artists Who Caught Companies and Fake Artists Shamelessly Copying Their Work and Selling It. I've got a link for this also down below in the description. When you look at this, you can tell that Disney clearly took this woman's piece of art. I don't know who is responsible in the Disney company for how this happens and who okays it and how many hands it went through, but clearly her work was taken. And the same thing goes for the Kohl's t-shirt. It's really unfortunate that artists have to worry about this, not just from the everyday person walking by their booth, but from major corporations with lots of money and lawyers about what happens when their artwork is taken. So sometimes when you go to art festivals, you will see some painters, some photographers post signs that say, please do not take any pictures of our work. As an artist, I know that newer artists can get really paranoid about their artwork being taken. And the honest truth of it is that it's inevitable. Someone is going to take your artwork. In fact, some artists say that that's how you know you made it. You know you made it when someone's taken your work, as this guy will say. That being said, still protect yourself. Still try to watermark your images. Try to make sure that they're not too large. Try to make sure that you include that they're copyrighted. There are also different search engines you can use to see if your image will pop up on products or things that are out there. What can you do about it legally? What you can do about it is register your art. Registering your work costs anywhere from $35 to $55. It can take a couple months for it to go through. Registering your work establishes a record of your copyright ownership. You must register before you can sue someone for copyright infringement. If you register your copyright within 3 months of publication or before an infringement occurs, you're entitled to statutory damages and your legal fees in a copyright infringement lawsuit. Statutory damages allow you to recover money without proving the monetary value of your loss or the infringer's profits. If you register your copyright, you can also register with the U.S. Customs Service to receive protection against imports of infringing copies. That sounds a little complicated, but if you don't have your work registered, that doesn't mean that you're not protected. It just means that you won't be able to get statutory damages. The most you would ever be able to get with your work being unregistered is the money that they made from their profit off of your work, which in some cases can be very little, which is why some people don't bother going the legal route. If it's just one person who printed up 5 prints of your work, are you really going to try to get them for damages? No. That's why it can be a little maddening to try to chase down any person who's trying to take your work. Most of the time, you may not know what their profits are or how much it's going to be. So usually what an artist does is when they notice that someone has their work up, usually to try to sell prints of it, they'll ask the person to take it down. If the person fails to take it down, what usually happens is the artist tries to do the shaming word of mouth. And that's, I guess, what we would call it today, like a little bit more like cancel culture. Like, oh no, look at this company, they're stealing my artwork. And you try to make as big of a fuss about it so that it gets the company's attention. And then that forces everyone to sort of speak ill of them to the point that they don't want to tarnish their reputation, and then they'll take it down. I live in Georgia. So what we have is the Georgia Lawyers for the Arts. And Georgia Lawyers for the Arts, for a small fee, or if you donate a piece of art that covers the fee, you can get free legal advice and free legal counseling and a lot of other free legal things. There's a lot of different requirements for it, but if you're a full-time artist, they will help you. It's a great organization. I've donated to them. I've attended some of their galas, but it's a great way for you to get some legal advice and help if you're just starting out and you happen to live in Georgia. What about fair use and other laws? There's a lot of different discussions surrounding fair use, especially in YouTube. And the way I like to summarize it for art in the quickest way possible is whether or not money is involved. The moment money is involved, that really changes the nature of fair use. You can go into your bedroom and you can paint all the Disney princesses that you want on the wall. But the instant that you do that for money and the instant you do that on a business, that changes things a lot. Disney is especially fierce in the courtroom, and I found an article that covers 3 lawsuits that they slapped on daycares. And let me go into that because that seems really unfair at first, but maybe after we talk a little bit about what went on and why, the lawsuits will make a little bit more sense. And it's like with anything, it's really easy to villainize a large corporation because they have so much money and so much power, but when you think of it happening to you, all of a sudden your feelings on it change. So, here's the article. In 1989, Disney did the unthinkable, threatened legal action to not 1, not 2, but 3 daycare centers. What would make a multi-billion-dollar company, which prides itself on being the happiest place on earth, to threaten to file lawsuits? Ultimately, it came down to one thing: trademarks. On the walls of these 3 Florida daycare centers were life-size paintings of Disney characters: Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, and Goofy. When Disney became aware of their existence, they threatened to go to court if the drawings were not removed. Unsurprisingly, there was a lot of public outcry after Disney had to announce the threat of legal action. So Teams in Business's article seems to tell us a story that seems very cut and clear. Oh my goodness, it's a daycare. They just want to have these cartoon images. Why is Disney going after them? This feels really petty. Well, let's go a little bit more into the details, and I'll follow you a little bit further down in this article. So did Disney have valid reasons to threaten legal action? Absolutely. Though their decision may be morally questionable on the surface, they do present important reasons when looked under the lens of the law. Let's think about this way. As a small business owner, you know it takes a lot of time and effort to create an original piece of work, including trademarks. They're valuable assets that add distinction and unique qualities to your business. Now imagine if someone used your trademark freely without your consent or monetary payment. What do you get out of this? Nothing. I'm going to post the rest of the article on the screen, so if you want to read all the fine details you can, but I'm just going to cover the main points in this next bit. Here are 3 legal reasons why Disney decided to threaten to sue the daycares. 1, you need to proactively protect your trademark. 2, it's unfair to those who do pay to be a licensee. 3, using a trademark without a license may suggest affiliation. If you're unfamiliar with the term paying to be a licensee, for things like Disney, say you wanted to do and sell drawings of Yoda from Star Wars that now belongs to Disney, you would need to become a licensee. You would pay for the right, they would approve of you, and then you could sell those images of Yoda. that is doing something ethically and with their consent, but also they're paying for the right. So they're saying, if somebody else can just put these images on their daycare and they don't have to pay to be a licensee, why would their licensees pay? It kind of creates the, why do some have to pay and not others? So it's you using their information for business. And like the third point says, it also kind of implies that you're an affiliate. Like, they're not a Disney daycare, but they do have Disney images, and people can kind of think that one is related to the other. It's sort of like when the ads for YouTube didn't want to run on content creators that they found questionable. It wasn't that they wanted the content to represent their company, but just by them airing side by side, it seemed that one condoned the other or was a part of the other. And that's when that situation wanted to change. You can almost seem as though you're contributing to something that you don't mean to be that way. Disney doesn't want to be part of that daycare, especially what if the daycare got some sort of charges, like some kids had been mistreated. Then it seems like Disney daycare mistreats children, you know, when they had nothing to do with it, they just put a Mickey Mouse on the wall. There's more to stealing artwork than going into a museum and grabbing a well-known piece of artwork and taking it as your own. And there's more to it than just snapping a photo of someone's work and then selling a bunch of handbags that have it on there. There's also purchasing the work. And not a lot of people know that when they're going to purchase things. It's very easy that when you purchase something from a store, you're going through these online stores, that there's the idea that this must be on the up and up. It's a business and it must be legal, and what they're doing should surely be all right. That case is not true. There are a lot of print shops that will be very unscrupulous about printing up the artwork of others. I see this a lot in Etsy. For example, there's this artist, Jean-Michel, who I've pulled up right here on Etsy. Now, this person definitely isn't in public domain. They haven't died in 70 years past since, but you can see a list of different products that have their artwork on it. Now, the problem is that maybe this store is a licensee. I don't have any way to confirm it, and most of the time that would be a very difficult thing to do. When I go to their shop, there's no clarity, and no, they're not an artist. They're a print shop, and print shops make money by selling prints. And so for them, they want to sell prints of things that people like, and it's very easy for them to get these images online. Ideally, you would be a licensee, so that means that you would get a quality image, and you'd be able to print that, and you'd still be giving royalties to the artist, but very frequently that's not the case. We just think, oh, I love this artist, oh, there's a print of their work, ah, I'll buy it. And maybe not a single penny went to the actual artist. Maybe the print shop just absorbed it all. I hate to say it, but that happens quite frequently, so again, that's why some artists can be very sensitive about you taking photos of their work. Is it stealing to use someone's photograph as a reference for your art? Maybe. In my other video, Are These Artists Cheating?, I talk more about the ethics of using reference material and how to make sure that your artwork is original and transformative. Here, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the legality. So I think a great example for this is discussing a piece that was created by Mr. Brainwash. The Los Angeles-based street artist, better known as Mr. Brainwash, has lost copyright case involving a 1977 photograph of the punk rock musician Sid Vicious, shot by the British photographer Dennis Morris. Mr. Brainwash had claimed that the 7 works he created using Morris's black and white photograph, including 1 mural and 1 collage made of broken vinyl records, were sufficiently altered to be protected by the Fair Use Defense, which allows for the use of copyrighted material for commentary, criticism, and parody. The federal judge rejected his claim, saying that most of the defendant's work adds certain new elements, but the overall effect of each is not transformative. So looking at that image and then looking at his artwork, you can clearly see that he had used that photograph to make that piece of art, and the judge had decided that it hadn't changed enough to be considered a new piece of art. Determining whether or not something is transformative is going to ultimately be up to the judge, and there's nothing really in black and white or in our legal system that says, well, it must be 25% transformative to count as transformative. What I encourage artists to do if their artwork is going to be very close to a photographic reference is to get one that isn't copyrighted. You can get those at Pixabay, Unsplash. You can also pay a small fee and have the rights to an image. There's no need to steal it, and especially if something were to happen with your artwork, you don't want to be the artist that just takes and takes. What I do want to share is that some well-respected pieces of work are considered transformative and or inspired by another artist. A really great example to me is the painting Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. This painting had a piece done by Gottfried Helnwein called The Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Most people know The Boulevard of Broken Dreams and are very familiar with it because it's got Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe in it. It's a piece that took Hopper's work and said something else with it. And because they were both done traditionally, and because it was clear that he was making a commentary using a well-known piece of art, both are respected. They're both good in their own right. People like Hopper's work and they like Gottfried's work. Most of the time when one artist references another, it's with the assumption that you know they're making that reference. It's what makes the piece better. It's giving it additional context. For example, here's a piece by Banksy based on a movie clip from Pulp Fiction. He is not assuming that you think he came up with Pulp Fiction. It's because it's from Pulp Fiction that his change makes it transformative and builds upon what the image is. That, to me, is how transformative work is done correctly. However, determining whether or not something is transformative isn't up to me. It's up to the judge. Earlier in my video, I mentioned a question about Linza, which is an AI software application that generates new artwork from images that artists have uploaded online. This is still something that's controversial and people are debating. As an artist, when I upload my artwork for my website and for my social media in the hopes that I get more attention on my work, possibly generate sales, I'm not thinking that an AI is going to take it and use it in its algorithm as a piece to make something new. But legally, it's very transformative. It doesn't look like my original work. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of different opinions about this. There are two YouTubers who comment on this who I recommend listening to. One is Philip DeFranco, who also got his own portrait done by this AI bot before he knew that it was taking images from other artists. And another is by Hank Green. Both of them discuss it and they bring up some really valid points. As an artist, I'm going to be biased. Philip DeFranco and Hank Green are not artists, but they are creators. So I think they can appreciate how much work it takes to create the final product. As a painter, it can take me hours, days, weeks, years to finish a painting, but it takes someone 3 seconds to steal it. And it takes an AI milliseconds to use it. The issue's complicated and I'll likely cover it more in depth in a separate video. This is as far as I want to go in terms of discussing the American laws that are involved when it comes to whether or not art is being stolen. I'd like to move on to part 2. Part 2, what do the artists say? As most of us know, there's a difference between what is legal and what is considered ethical. Usually you can do something that's legal while still having the people around you find it to be ghastly behavior, like cursing in front of children. You can do it legally, but some people are going to be very offended. In the fitness industry, if you're a bodybuilder, you're not surprised that you and your compatriots are using chemical enhancers. But for somebody on the outside, they might find this to be repulsive. Now, of course, there's a difference between legal and illegal enhancers, and this is the same with art. When I was discussing artwork earlier about it being transformative, it was with something legal in mind. Now I'm going to discuss it more in terms of ethical, more in terms of what your relationship is in the art community and how it will affect you professionally. One of the most valuable aspects of a painting is that it's one of a kind. While many people will go and buy prints of the Mona Lisa, they don't believe that they own the Mona Lisa. But when you buy an original painting, it's different than getting a print. Part of this is because of how our eye digests color. What an artist will do is they may put blue down and then yellow down, and your eye will see green. And that dynamic interaction with the painting, the fact that you're interpreting green instead of green actually being there, is part of why when you see a painting in person, it can look so much more dynamic than when you see a print of it. If you've been lucky enough to see an original artwork and a print, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's always something that seems to be missing in the print, and that's why. When a piece of artwork is transformative and done the right way, like the Boulevard of Broken Dreams, you know it's paying homage to an original piece. You also know that it is done by an accomplished painter. This isn't somebody who was trying to sell the whole idea to you as though it was their own. They wanted that communication with the original artwork, and that is very different. We can sometimes forget that artists live in communities where we like to comment off of each other. With writers, you'll see a poet write one poem and then another poet make another that, is either contradicting them or agreeing with them. And the same thing can happen with artists. An artist can make a painting that is very well liked, and another artist can, in their own way with the painting, encourage them, build them up, communicate with them. That's great. That's expected. That's perfectly normal. That's been going on for hundreds of years, that artists are talking to each other, that they're talking to the past artists and the present artists and their peers. Sometimes what they're saying is a little ugly, and sometimes what they're saying is a compliment. And that's the really fun bit about knowing sort of what's going on a little bit behind the scenes of a painting. There's more than just the aesthetics. There's the meaning behind it and what they're trying to say. We can see that these transformative pieces are still making something new with their commentary, with their work. When somebody purposefully copies the work of another, that would be an incredibly embarrassing thing to do, because you're preying on the fact that your audience is too ignorant to know that you copied somebody else's work. Sometimes there are people that will take a painting, make a minor change, and then try to sell it off as their own. To me, when artists do this, when they either copy works or make minor changes and then say that it is theirs, they do it for two reasons. One is money. They want to make a profit. They feel that this piece of work is good enough to make money, so they're taking it to make money. The other reason is self-esteem. They don't feel good in any of the work they're doing, so they're stealing someone else's work so that they can feel good about themselves. I'm going to show kind of a sad example of this right here. I'm going to read this article. This is from the perspective of the artist Ryan Connors, who says, a friend had recommended a website called Image Rights. They offer up to 1,000 free uploads of images, which they will search the internet for. The results are bundled into folders like blogs, possibly resellers, outside art protection, etc. That's where I found my Frida and Friends painting. It was clearly my painting, but someone had vomited flowers all over it. So I turned to Google image search and went looking for the creator of the image. A girl in Peru with tons of stolen artwork she was passing off as her own. My piece was apparently her signature piece. This is tragic. To me, this is both somebody who lacked confidence in their own ability and wanted to make money. And in an effort to do that, they sold all of their integrity. They're preying on the fact that they think no one will know whose artwork they had scammed. Maybe they even think that because they're doing a reference piece of Frida, that everyone will recognize that it is a reference to Frida and enjoy it for that and not realize that it goes deeper. Hers is a taking of a reference of Frida's artwork, which is it's almost getting meta, but she could have made her own. She's tarnished her name in the art community. Even if she comes out and apologizes and then starts to generate work, there may always be a question in the back of people's minds as to whether or not it's her work. To me, her work is not transformative. She's not adding any meaning, and I would say that yes, she stole it. But that's really for a judge to decide. Now, why does it even matter? Well, if you identify as an artist and art is your passion, it has to be incredibly bleak if you are copying and taking the works of others. It should be something that you do and is part of you and that you're making stuff from. Perhaps if she had made one piece based off of Ryan's, I could say that she was just inspired by their work as opposed to taking it. The article kind of hints to the idea that there were many pieces done this way. It's sad because she should be able to do her own art, and she apparently does enough art that she's doing these floral backgrounds. To me, it seems that there's an interest there, but not confidence. It wouldn't be strange for a student's style to imitate that of their mentor, especially if you've learned in a very traditional way or you've had the same tutor for years and years and years. It would be normal because that's the person who's teaching you the colors to use and how to paint. Many people would believe that if you didn't see yourself as an artist and you didn't act with that integrity and you were fine with taking someone else's work and just changing the background and selling it, that you're not actually an artist, you're a con artist. Con artists trick people, they take their money, and they're parasites on their community that will eventually get shoved out. In the art community, there's a derogatory term used for pieces of work that are more than just inspired. The term is derivative. And derivative, inspired, and transformative can all seem like very similar terms. So here is derivative, here is inspired, and here is transformative. All of them are discussing outside influence. With derivative, it is negative. It is considered that you weren't inspired, you just kind of took and took. It could be that your work is just so similar to that other artist that they don't know what you're bringing to the table. That's what it means if you hear somebody in the art community say so-and-so is so derivative. They could be snobby, they could be over-talking, but what they're trying to say is that this artist brought nothing of themselves to the table and all they did was bring everything of this other artist. Transformative artwork and inspired artwork are still great forms of art. A lot of my artwork is inspired. I have this painting right here that is inspired, obviously, by Snow White. But it isn't that Snow White witch. It's my witch. I did my own rendition. I did what I saw and what I felt. And what I enjoy is for me to show somebody something that inspired me. Maybe they recognize it, maybe they know it, and I like them to experience it with me or through me. And so far, those have been some of my most favorite pieces of work to create. It sometimes feels that new artists are afraid to say that they're inspired or that they're talking to another piece of art. I believe that what they want to do is to create something original and something unique, and that when you say something was inspired by another thing, that somehow cheapens it. It makes it a knockoff version, which isn't true. It's very difficult for any artist to produce something that wasn't inspired or didn't get drawn from some sort of memory or experience that they had. There's a saying that used to bother me earlier on, which was, there's nothing new under the sun. And I always felt that my artwork had to be new. So maybe I'm speaking from my own lens of experience by saying this, but for me, I was at first very embarrassed to say that things had inspired me or that I was illustrating something from a book or a movie or a song. But as I started painting more and more, I became proud of those inspirations and it was fun to share them. With all that being said, those are my thoughts on art being stolen, my experiences with them. Please leave any of your comments down below. I'd love to hear them. I'm wrapping up the end of 2022. I really enjoyed making these videos and I'm going to continue on into 2023. Thank you so much.